Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, indie horror, I've got 4 more excellent indie horror books for you. So this month being Horror Mayhem, I'm reading a little bit more horror than usual, and have been prioritising reading independent horror books. So particularly ones that have been sent to me by the authors or publishers, because I did have a bit of a backlog of those. So I've been getting through them. I've been really enjoying the experience. So I did a video a little while ago where I had, I think, 5 that I'd read that I really enjoyed. I've got 4 more for you today. So all of these independently published, and all of them had something really interesting to offer. So I had a great time with all of them. So let me start with the one I don't have a physical copy of, and that is Bunch of Fives by James Flynn. So this is a short story collection, 5 short stories, all of them very different from each other, but written with a real skill, I thought. Short stories can be difficult to do well, and I thought James Flynn did really quite a good job with these. It's also a very nicely put together book. So there's like illustrations and things like that as you go through the book, which work really well. It felt like a very professionally assembled book. So yeah, the stories are very different from each other. They're all, in the introduction he says, they're all designed to have an impact on the reader. And I think some of them had more of an impact on me than others. The 2 that really stuck out. So the first one is a kind of weird, quite weird kind of psychological horror story, which feels like it's feels at first like it's going to be like a monster story, a bit. So it's about these people who are travelling to try and find like a Bigfoot type creature, but it ends up being quite a bizarre and disturbing psychological horror story, which I thought was really quite effective. So that was a really good one. The second story is about it's kind of a dystopian story about a world where it is a legal requirement that you have to share everything you do online. So you have to wear a camera on your head. You're not allowed any privacy at all, even like when you're having sex or going to the toilet, whatever. Everything has to be streamed. So I thought that was a really interesting idea and an interesting twist on our obsession with sharing things online. And done in a skillful way. So he doesn't have that many pages to tell these stories, but with this one in particular, he really does do a good job of building up the world that he's writing about, and connecting you with his main character. And the main character is someone who's a bit older, who's kind of fighting against this obsession with sharing everything, and gets sent to like a re-education camp as a result. So I thought it was a really interesting concept, very kind of reminiscent of Black Mirror or something like that. But well done. And then the third story definitely made an impact on me as well, albeit for different reasons. So it's very funny, but very very rude as well. Just some sequences in this particular story which I cannot tell you what they were on camera, but it's quite bawdy, shall we say. So that was good as well. And the other 2 stories were good too, but the first 2 in particular I thought were really effective. What I would say is I think Flynn does a better job of kind of building up the stories and coming up with good ideas and building up the stories. The endings weren't always perfect, but not really to the detriment of the book. I think it was something I felt could have been better, but it wasn't really a problem. So that's definitely one I'd recommend if you fancy a short story collection. Moving on then, something very different. So The Fall of the House of Thomas Weir by Andrew Neil MacLeod, which is a historical horror novel, so set in Edinburgh in the 1800s, or the 18th century rather, and follows 2 real-life characters, Dr. Johnson and Boswell, so the famous, Johnson being the famous writer, who've gone up to Edinburgh to see some people they know up there and get involved in investigating this mysterious occurrence at a cemetery. So that occurrence is kind of at the opening of the book, and he's really genuinely quite creepy as this character who's like the caretaker of the cemetery encounters something very bizarre in a tomb, and the story kind of spirals from there, and it's full of action. It's really engrossing. There's loads going on. There's something like a different crazy theory on every page, pretty much. So I really, really enjoyed it. It wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting maybe something a bit more staid, but it's a bit of a wild ride in the end. It definitely has kind of a slightly pulpy, kind of Penny Dreadful type feel to it, but in a really good way. I had a lot of fun with it. Next, another short story collection. This one really surprised me. So this was a fascinating and kind of charming collection of horror short stories. So the author reached out to me a while ago and sent me a copy of it. And so he lives in the town of Kilbrony, where all these stories are set. So Kilbrony is a small town in Northern Ireland. And I don't know how much. Well, I know that the book isn't true because it's like spooky supernatural horror stories. I don't know how much of the folklore at the heart of the book is like, you know, real genuine folklore from the area. But it starts off with this this kind of demon. So in like medieval times, this demon coming to the area. And, you know, leaving his mark on the area. And what you then get is a more modern kind of 20th century series of short stories about different characters who live in the town and the weird things that happen to them. So I didn't say the name of the author, did I? So the author is Frank O'Neill. And he weaves into this some kind of familiar stuff in terms of kind of urban legends and kind of creepypasta type stuff that you will have seen before, but weaves it into this town and weaves it into the folklore around this demon Brony who has, as I said, left his mark on the area before. What you get as well throughout the book are kind of lovely photographs of the area, some of which look to be historical ones. Which kind of bring the town to life for you, but then you also get some really creepy pictures as well, which are like artists' impressions of like supernatural figures that take play a part in some of the stories. So I just thought it was a really nice book, and by the sound of it, Frank O'Neill wrote it as a bit of a kind of passion project to write something about the town he lives in, to be able to share it with other people in the town. So he's definitely succeeded on that front, but it's a really effective short story, collection as well, even for people who don't know the town, and I don't, but I had a really good time with it. I thought it was a really, as I say, quite a charming portrayal of a small town, but with a definite kind of creepy supernatural edge to it as well. And then finally, I've read this one this morning. This is Sleeping Among Wolves by Robert Royal Poff, which is a novella. So I reviewed another book by Robert Royal Poff, which was called A Call from the Void, a little while ago on the channel. So that was a short story collection, which I enjoyed. I also really enjoyed this. So this is basically it's like a zombie apocalypse type story, which I don't normally enjoy. And indeed, they are not referred to, well, I think they're referred to once as zombies in this book, but they're not undead. It's more about a virus that induces people to become like uncontrollable cannibals, basically. So this thing has happened. This virus has swept through the earth, and 6 months later, we follow like a gay couple, who are trying to survive basically, and hooking up with various kind of settlements and things like that. The twist being that one of them gets infected early on in the story and is gradually trying to fight those impulses as the story progresses. So it's not necessarily like the most original thing I've ever read. But it was really, really well done. So it's really gripping. There's a lot of action and a lot of gore, which was very effectively handled. But you do really feel, you get to know these two central characters, and you do really feel for their plight. And it's, it's quite moving. The love they feel for each other, and their desperation at the situation they find themselves in, and the unfairness of it, I thought was really, really well handled. So a really enjoyable short horror tale. It's like 90 pages or something like that. But I was completely gripped by it. I read it cover to cover in one sitting. So yeah, definitely another one I would recommend. So, hope you found that interesting. As I said before, I think there's some really interesting stuff happening in the indie horror space at the moment. And these 4 books, all very different from each other, I think are all good examples of that. So yeah, let me know if you've read any good indie horror recently. And as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.